Is it Molly or?
It's me. I'm recording.
Oh, hey,
Oh, you are
hey, Molly.
recording. Are you, Molly? Are you also like letting people in the waiting room?
Yep, I will be in charge of that.
Get started. I just want to quickly introduce myself because I don't know everyone here. My name is Mary Newberger, and I am a professor of history here at UT Austin, and I'm the director of the Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Studies. And this is Balkan Circle. Kirill, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, once again, I would like to apologize for being late, technical difficulties today. My name is Kirill Abramov, and I'm an assistant professor of political science at the Department of Slavic and Eurasian Studies. And I'm excited for our last guest today, Professor Orlin Sabev, and a quite interesting topic. To conclude this particular season of Balkan Circle, which has become more or less the epicenter, at least here in Texas, if not beyond, of all things Balkan. Mary, should I introduce our guest today, or that has been done already?
No, I can go ahead and introduce him.
Okay, thank you.
I edited down the bio a little bit because it's quite long because you have so many accomplishments, but it's my pleasure today to introduce Orlin Sabev, who's a professor of history at the Institute for Balkan Studies at the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. He's also a senior member of the Typographic project, which is focused on early Arabic printing for the Arabic-speaking Christians and cultural transfers between Eastern Europe and the Ottoman Near East in the 18th century, which is financed by the European Research Council and hosted by the Institute of East European Studies at the Romanian Academy in Bucharest. His research in the field of Ottoman education, printing, and history of medicine has been published under numerous titles. He's a very prolific scholar. Some of them include Ottoman Schools in the Bulgarian Lands, Spiritus Roberti, Shaping New Minds, and Robert College in Late Ottoman Society, The Book and Its Shrine, History of Ottoman Libraries in Bulgaria, Waiting for Müteferrika, Glimpses of Ottoman Print Culture, Enlightened in the East by the Flames of the West, Bulgarian Students in Istanbul, and The Dance of Cholera. Dr. Sabev is also an author of over 100 articles in the same fields, as well as topics related to Ottoman cultural and social history, everything from prostitution to Islamic mysticism, the Turkish minority in Bulgaria, and Ottoman diplomatic and paleography. So I'm really excited for your talk today. It's the title is the Müteferrika Press and its typographical approach. So take it away, Dr. Sabev.
Thank you very much, Mary, for inviting me to join your Balkan Circle series. And it's an opportunity to share with you some new results of my research on this topic. And my research is a part of, as you mentioned, of a bigger project called Typographic, which is related to the early Arabic printing for the Arabic-speaking Christians. It's a project supported by the European Research Council, and it's the leader of the project is Professor Ioana Fyodorov from the Romanian Academy of Sciences, and she's also among us today. So thank you very much, Ioana, for joining. And I would also like to say that the project includes some 20 prominent researchers in the history of Arabic printing, and their work is a very nice source of inspiration for my work. So I consider my research as a result of a cooperative study, and I hope that you will enjoy my talk today. In my talk, I will discuss the operation of the Müteferrika Press in Istanbul. It was established in 1727 in Istanbul and operated until 1747. By the way, I have also a PowerPoint presentation, and now I will share my screen with you. I hope that you can see the presentation. So in my talk, I will focus on the typographical challenges the Müteferrika press had to meet in order to satisfy the demand for its readers and to fit into an even stronger manuscript culture. The establishment of this press was initiated by Ibrahim Müteferrika, who was a Hungarian Protestant born in Transylvania, today's Romania, and who later found refuge in the Ottoman Empire and converted to Islam. So he became a Muslim subject to the Sultan. He began experimenting with printing in 1719, together with an experienced local Jewish printer called Yonah. And also he was joined in 1724 by Mehmet Seyit Efendi, and the two began their adventure in printing. In 1727, their printing press was officially licensed as a joint venture, and but at the end of the 1732, Seyit Efendi left the company, and Müteferrika continued to print books as an individual until his death in early 1747. The press was allowed to print only non-religious books. You can see now at the screen a very
Professor,
rare engraving depicting the Müteferrika press. This engraving is published in a German book.
Professor Sabev, if it's possible, I'm sorry, some of our audience, because wants to have the wider screen, can we click from the beginning? Because it will enlarge your presentation on our screens, if possible.
To begin my
Uh,
presentation from the beginning.
No,
yeah,
to go to slideshow view.
slideshow view, in order for us to see larger uh,
Ah,
slides.
I can see slideshow now, but you cannot see maybe. I don't know how to do this.
That- I'm sorry, I didn't want it to, it's just.
Well, there's a little icon that you need to click on. Wait. Okay.
Orlin, click the little icon on the bottom right that looks like a screen on a pedestal. Right bottom.
Ah, yes, I saw
You
it.
see, so we saw that we see the entire slide and we don't see them on the left.
Can you now see the entire slide?
No.
No.
I think you need to do this first and then to share.
Okay, I see.
Stop sharing, place the slide on your own screen and then share.
I'm so sorry, I didn't want it to disrupt for sure.
But when I have the presentation on my screen, I cannot see the Zoom.
That's okay.
window.
Maybe if you can just do as we were, and everyone will listen carefully.
I have one more idea for something to click, but let's just get back to screen sharing first. And then if this doesn't work, then we'll be good.
I should stop screen sharing?
No, 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 do not. No, yeah, start screen sharing. So we can't see your screen right now. Yeah.
You
All
can
right.
see.
Do you see in the upper left corner, there's a text that says from current slide. It's really above the list of slides that you can scroll through. Yeah, try clicking on from, no, just up from there, and then from current slide. Yeah, click on that. And well, all right. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Let's just go as it is.
Let's just keep going.
Professor Sabev, we're so sorry, you know.
All right. So now you can see the second slide, right?
Yes.
Yes, it's fine. Yes.
Yes, fine. I'm sorry for that. So I'm not very good in these computer technologies.
Not a problem. Not a problem. We're all ears. Please continue.
Anyway, so on these two tables, you can see the publications of the Müteferrika Press. Müteferrika published a total of 16 books comprising 22 volumes between 1729 and 1742. Now you can see the first 8 titles. Among them, the 8th one was Grammaire Turque. It was a French grammar for a grammar written in French, but designed for learning Turkish. And the next 8 publications you can see on the continuation of the table. These books covered subjects such as history, geography, cosmography, lexicography, physics, state and military affairs. And what we have in hand is actually the estate inventory of Ibrahim Müteferrika, recorded upon his demise in early 1747. And it reveals the numbers of the unsold copies of these books. And the total print run of all the 16 books was about 1,000 copies. And according to the state inventory, some 300 copies remained unsold by his death in 1747. So, in other words, Müteferrika managed to sell maybe 2/3 of the books he printed. But how it was connected to the transition from manuscript to print culture. The transition from scribal to print culture was undoubtedly a difficult and slow process. The renowned researcher of the history of European printing, Elizabeth Eisenstein, suggested that printing was an agent of change due to which a communications revolution has taken place. Many researchers also tend to view the advent of printing as a revolutionary act in the world of Islam. However, there are some other scholars who think that the transition from scribal to print culture was not a revolution, but evolution. So obviously the complex and long transition from manuscript to print culture was not a process in one direction, but a process which involved simultaneously applied scribal and printing modes of production and reproduction of texts. And the communications revolution, however, Eisenstein meant not a change that occurred with a single event, but a long revolution. It's a quote taken from Raymond Williams' definition, who has a book called The Long Revolution. That is a long-term process of breaking with the past, whose results were gradually becoming clear. In a recent article, J.R. Osborne dwelt on Raymond Williams' concepts of the Long Revolution and its usefulness with regard to the question why Ottoman Turkish printing was introduced so late. He argued that the usefulness of Williams' models is an extended its extended duration. Ottoman print adoption does not appear delayed in a long revolutionary model. Given this methodological framework, Osborne claimed that the Müteferrika press introduced both a new genre of state-oriented text as well as a new style of script, that is the movable type, with which to represent these novel texts. Handwritten script variation was standardized, according to Osborne, through the movable type. As a matter of fact, Osborne's cogitation raises the question of how Ibrahim Müteferrika overcame the typographical challenges of the specific Arabic script. In 1726, Ibrahim Müteferrika wrote a treatise on the means of printing, and in it he was still trying to convince the Ottoman authorities and to overcome the skepticism of the scribes and the rigid religious functionaries related to the introduction and adoption of printing in an Ottoman context. Müteferrika described the technology of printing as just, quote, a style of writing of the styles of writing. He even spoke of, quote, the obvious possibility the books produced through the art of printing being calligraphical ones. In other words, Müteferrika tried to convince the Ottoman authorities and the other actors in the book market in the Ottoman Empire that printing technology was just another kind of writing. In the column of one of his later publications, Müteferrika pointed out that, quote, the copies of this book had been made numerous through the new way of writing of the art of printing in order to become complete, complemented, and useful to the public. A renowned specialist in Arabic typography, Thomas Milo, notes that the term khat, which means in Arabic calligraphy or beautiful writing, he thinks that it doesn't denote only calligraphy, but any kind of writing, even typographic. Given this, Müteferrika tried not only to convince his potential readership that printing provided just another type of script, even a calligraphical one, but also tried to prove his argument by demonstrating this in practice. From a typographical point of view, the Arabic script was as important as all the other aspects of adoption of printing technology by the ruling Ottoman elite and the leading Muslim intellectual circles. One aspect of this issue was the so-called script grammar. The term refers to the consistent structures formed by written elements to represent meaningful messages. In the case of the Arabic script grammar, most graphemes, consisting of vertical and horizontal strokes and dots, connect cursively in a particular way from right to left and thus form shared shapes of letter blocks. J.R. Osborne also says that the layering of signs constructs a two-dimensional space of meaningful relationships. On the other hand, Thomas Milo explains that the different styles of Arabic writing have not only shapes, but also script rules of their own. Therefore, in Arabic script, the words and sentences are not just a sequence of letters, or writing Arabic involves more than just lining up letters, because the Arabic letters could be connected not only horizontally, but also vertically to form letter blocks or graphic units. They are visual entities which are fixed and perceived as such. Printing with movable type had no option but to create isolated types for individual Arabic letters. This allowed the reproduction of the content, but not the exact design of Arabic writing or the correct horizontal and vertical connections of the Arabic letters. This shortcoming caused, according to Thomas Milo, the reluctance of the Ottoman authorities to adopt typesetting and printing of Arabic script. Since it was quite difficult to achieve the above-mentioned complete forms of Arabic script by means of movable type, which is suitable only to achieve a mere sequence of letter forms, Müteferrika actually tried to overcome this imperfection through implementing xylography forms when it came to the titles and the Islamic invocation, basmala. He preferred to place both of them in wood blocks that allowed him to imitate better and more accurately their handwritten appearance. So now you can see on the right image the invocation formula here, which is woodcut. And also on the left image, you can see another formula, which is related to the firman issued by Sultan Ahmed III, giving the permission for the opening of the printing press. This sentence was also reproduced by means of xylography or by woodcut. The perfect visual appearance of the title, let me show you another sample. Here on the left side, you can see that the title of one of the publications of Müteferrika related to the history of discovery of America. Here the title, and below the title the invocation formula, were reproduced by woodcut. And the text itself here is typeset. So it was reproduced through the movable type technology discovered by Gutenberg in the 15th century. The perfect visual appearance of the title was as important as that of the basmala or the invocation, because the latter was the only expression in Müteferrika's publications in which the Arabic word for God, Allah, was used. Because of the religious sensitivity of his readers and customers, for Müteferrika it was important that the word Allah to appear in a printed form, not distorted in a typeset, but as closer as to its generally and historically accepted written form according to Arabic script grammar. Therefore, for the woodcut reproductions of the titles and the basmala formula, Müteferrika used the so-called Tulut style, which the Muslim scribes used extensively in displaying headings and titles. The aim of the visual similarity of the printed versions of the titles and the Islamic invocation with their traditional manuscript appearance that Müteferrika was able to achieve not through the typeset but woodcut was to obtain the reader's trust in the books reproduced with the newly introduced printing technology. After all, it was a matter of sensitivity on the part of the reading public towards both the contents and the form of the written word and the images. Similarly, the titles of the Arabic books printed by the Medici press in the late 16th century, as well as the titles and the Christian invocations of some Arabic-type Christian texts printed in the 18th and 19th century, also were woodcut and followed manuscript patterns. I can show you such a book, the Book of Hours, printed in Bucharest in 1702, And you can see almost the same style of reproduction of this time Christian invocation by means of woodcut. As for the typeset reproduction of the running text, as I have already told you, Müteferrika applied the Naskh style. It means that when he applied the woodcut, he used a more elaborative style of writing, Zeus style. But when it comes for the style of the running text, he used the most applied Naskh style. As J.R. Osborne correctly notes, the choices of font or dress a text for an intended audience, and styles of script indicate particular uses and different genres of written messages. Therefore, Müteferrika's choice of a particular style among the notable variety of Arabic scripts, and he chose Naskh style, is an important issue that has recently deserved close scholarly attention. Müteferrika preference was in a way predetermined, actually. First, it was a dominant style of Ottoman practice, and as Osborne puts it, Naskh style operated as the new Times New Roman style of our times. Second, for the same reason, Müteferrika's predecessors in Arabic typography, such as the Western presses, printing Arabic Christians' liturgical text, the Quran, or the classical Arabic Islamic text, as well as the Arabic Christian presses in the Romanian principalities and Aleppo, already applied the very same script, the Naskh script. Even though Osborne remarks that when applied to Arabic text, movable type was unable to replicate the expected form of literate and scribal Naskh. As the scholars of Arabic typography note, the Arabic types that were cast and used either in Europe or in the Middle East had specific foreign or European appearances. Therefore, Thomas Miller calls these types Eurabic. In his 1726 treatise on the means of printing, Müteferrika referred to the Western printed publications of Arabic Islamic text as being unwelcome in the Islamic world, not only for the numerous typos and grammatical errors in them, but also using the Western style of Arabic script, called Maghrebi writing. It is assumed that the type of the Quran printing, for example, by Paganini and Alessandro Paganini in 1537 in Italy, was also of Maghrebi style. Müteferrika referred to the Arabic script variation popular in the Maghreb, that is in the western part of the Arab world, which obviously differed from the script variations widespread in the Arab East and did not satisfy the aesthetic demands of the local population. Referring to the specific Arabic script grammar, Karsten Niebuhr, who traveled to Istanbul and then to Egypt and Yemen in the 1760s, described this situation in the following way. I have shown printed books to Arabs from the East, but they have found them hard to read. That is why the printing press of Ibrahim Effendi was soon established in Constantinople. In the contemporary Western sources, also you can see that they underline the superior typographic quality of the Müteferrika publications. For example, on 8 May 1728, Mercurii Relación communicated a report from Vienna conveying that there had been received a sheet from the newly established printing press in Constantinople, which is widely admired for the purity of the paper and the letters. As Osborne points out, Müteferrika and his Jewish type founder Iona attempted to create a Naskh typeface that was as close as possible to the Ottoman tribal Naskh. Osborne claims also that although European types often included variant for select letters, the Müteferrika typeface displays contextual and variant forms unlike any Arabic types previously cast in Europe or elsewhere. According to Emanuele Conidi, shortly before Müteferrika, the same approach had been applied also in casting the Arabic typefaces of the Aleppo press, which operated between 1706 and 1711 and published Christian liturgical books. The typefaces of the Aleppo press resemble the Naskh style used by the Syrian Christian copists. Kunidi also underlines the close connection between the Müteferrika typeface and the manuscript tradition. She says the following: despite exhibiting flaws in its technical execution, Müteferrika's typography reflects the influence of direct contact with Islamic writing culture, achieving a superior quality than earlier Arabic type from Europe. However, his contribution went well beyond the accomplishment of his type, representing a turning point for the development of indigenous Arabic typography. Given the aforementioned observations, one may compare the two different publications of one and the same text, and namely Ibn Arab Shah's work titled The Wonders of Destiny Concerning the Calamities wrought by Tamerlane. It was first printed in Arabic script in Leiden in the 17th century and then by Müteferrika in 1730. The comparison between the designs of the Arabic script of the two publications indeed reveals that Müteferrika's design differed from the Western one and was much closer to the manuscript Arabic style spread in the Levant. It seems, however, that the superior typography quality demonstrated by Müteferrika publications did not yet fully satisfy book lovers. Titus Nemeth makes the following point. Although Müteferrika's typography was significantly better than any Arabic letterpress printed that had been produced before, it remained far removed from the aesthetic norms of Ottoman manuscript practice. The column is too wide, interlinear space is insufficient, lines are poorly aligned, individual letter forms lack definition, and numerous sorts are smudged with ink. In combination, these aspects result in overly dense, dark, and cluttered pages, and the text gives a patchy, irregular impression that does not invite to read. Comparing Müteferrika's edition to a contemporaneous manuscript shows that the type lacks the even rhythm, has none of the forward-leaning dynamism, and crucially is significantly less clear than the handwritten text. Similar observations were made some 2 centuries ago. For example, François Baron de Thot, who lived in the second half of the 18th century, relates that the Müteferrika press could not prove perfections in connections. It was held in contempt, and Ibrahim closed down the printing shop soon. François de Thot actually meant the connection between the Arabic letters and their fusion in letter blocks, which always were problematic in printing with movable type. In the middle of the 19th century, Jean-Henri Ubicini also drew attention to that problem, especially in terms of competition with the calligraphically executed manuscript. It was not until 1797, that is late 18th century, when the Ottoman Armenian typeface maker Arapo Bogos cast new Naskh typefaces for the newly founded Mühendishane Press in Istanbul to replace the worn-out Müteferrika's typefaces. However, only in 1867, another Ottoman Armenian typographer called Mühendisoğlu Ohanes succeeded in reproducing the Naskh style according to the demanding standards of the Islamic calligraphic tradition and became known as the Gutenberg of the East. Even though towards the close of the 19th century, as Lucy Garnett relates, the Turks still preferred the elegantly written manuscripts to the printed books, and therefore the practice of manuscript copying was widely spread. As already pointed out, the Arabic script grammar offered a challenge for printing in Arabic, which turned out to be a difficult task and, in a sense, an impractical endeavor, firstly because it required many more letter forms than the other scripts, and secondly because these forms needed to be perfectly linked to each other, not only horizontally but also vertically. As a consequence, the typesetting process took much longer, and on the top of it, the result was not always satisfactory, thus leaving little room for the claim that printing is a better way of duplicating text than copying by hand. Yet calligraphy was a supreme Islamic art that made the successful introduction of printing technology to the Islamic world quite a hard task. When lithography was introduced to the Muslims in the 19th century, it proved to be much more satisfying to the Muslim reading public on aesthetic grounds. In any case, Müteferrika did his best to overcome the typographic challenges of the cursive Arabic script and sought his readers' and customers' appreciation by sticking also to the traditional manuscript layout. Handwritten texts were usually framed with borders and roofed with a decorative headpiece whose shape resembled the ornate gateways of the monumental public buildings in the Islamic world. Here you can see such a similarity between the headpieces of manuscript on the right side. In the middle, you can see almost the same form at the gate of a mosque in Istanbul. And on the left side, you can see a printed headpiece, which Müteferrika himself used in one of his publications, trying to follow the same headpiece model. As Yasemin Gencer notes, the first three Müteferrika publications were rather Spartan in appearance. Actually, in his first three publications, there were not any standalone titles. Instead, Müteferrika mentioned the titles either of the text he published, either in the prefaces he personally prepared, or in the applications he submitted in order to obtain printing permission for the particular publication. The lack of a standalone title would certainly make it difficult for the potential buyers to know exactly which book they were buying. Müteferrika's initial practice of mentioning the title in the preface was not a very marketable approach when offering multiple copies of the same work through the medium of print for the first time. Here maybe the inertia of the scribal culture came into play. In the manuscript age, you either copy a particular work yourself, hire a scribe, or simply buy it from a bookseller. In this case, where there was usually no need to clearly identify the text by title or by author, the user or owner of the manuscript copy was specific enough, and the copy text was identified either by oral tradition, memory, or by the additional insertion of the title and the author's name somewhere in the copy, either on the first or opening page, or on the one of the 3 edges of the book. I think I have such an example. You can see that the title of the book was written on the one of the edges of the corpus. In book printing, however, a particular printed text was marketed and distributed in multiple copies, and the customer, end user, is a priori unknown, anonymous. This new type of printer book reader relationship required a greater degree of clear and unambiguous identification of the text, which was subject to a more mass type of book exchange. The printed book now needed a title, just as the mass commodity needed a label, so that the buyer in the book market could identify it. Müteferrika seems to have recognized this shortcoming of his first 3 publications and corrected it ad hoc. The fourth and the subsequent publications of Müteferrika already have a woodcut title put above the running text on the opening page. This gave his publications a recognizable label on the book market. This initial omission may have been due to his inexperience or to his initial enthusiasm, in which some details, though essential, such as the title, escaped his notice. Indeed, the first 3 publications were being prepared for printing at the same time. That is, deficiency was corrected. This omission is also puzzling because there was already a pattern. The publications of the Medici press from the late 16th century, they have not only standalone titles, but even title pages on which these titles and the names of the respective authors appear. It is unclear why Müteferrika did not follow this model from the outset. Instead, he followed the winding road of constant visual experimentation. The style of the standalone titles in his 4th and following publications, together with the basmala formula, developed, and according to Ganger, it developed from a rather bland to a more fluid and detailed one, following the general trend of the press moving toward producing more elaborate and aesthetically pleasing books. However, this process was not consistent and did not follow a one-way path. The first 2 publications had printed borders on the pages containing the main text. The pages containing the additional text, such as prefaces, table of contents, errata indices, etc., did not, while the following publications did not have such borders. Thus, the later publications look even more Spartan. The clarification in Müteferrika's estate inventory that the unbound copies of his publications found upon his demise were without borders indicates that these borders have been additionally drawn by hand either before their submission to the book market or after their purchase by the end users. The first 7 publications do not have decorative headpieces on the opening page. As you can see here in this publication, you can see only the title, and below the title the invocation formula, but there's no any headpiece above the title. Many surviving copies of the Müteferrika press have such headpieces, but they are additionally drawn by hand in the style of the traditional illumination. The 8th publication, Grammature, which I have already mentioned, had a Western style layout with a title page and decorative elements such as headpieces and vignettes. As for the ninth publication, which was published in 1732, that is 3 years later than the first publication, Müteferrika started putting a woodcut decorative headpiece on the opening page, doing his best to follow the tradition of Oriental manuscript illumination and to please the aesthetic taste of his customers. I can show this one. This is the first publication of Müteferrika, which includes such printed headpiece in which the title of the text is inserted into the headpiece. And this was only the ninth publication of Müteferrika, which introduced such a decorative printed headpiece. In doing so, that is putting printed headpiece, Müteferrika apparently tried to overcome ad hoc some of the shortcomings of his earlier publications. In some copies of his publications, the black and white printed headpieces have been additionally colored by hand, apparently at the initiative of their owners. Except for the French manual Grammaire, the main text of all the Müteferrika publications ends not only with colophon of the author of the text itself, as reproduced from the manuscript copy, but also a printer's colophon. Sticking to scribal practice again, both printed colophons imitate the triangular or the inverted pyramid form of the manuscript ones by progressively narrowing the line of justification. You can see the colophons of two publications of Müteferrika, in which this very typical for the manuscript copies triangular form of the colophons was imitated in the printed publications of Müteferrika. Given the fact also that the titles of the Müteferrika publications were mostly in Arabic, but also partly in Persian, the colophons were also in Arabic, and it may suggest that this approach gave the publications, otherwise containing main text in Turkish, a framework that also made them look like a typical manuscript, not only in terms of visual, but also linguistic appearance. In some of the last publications, these colophons coexisted with what I call quasi-title pages. You can see this quasi-title page. Such pages were inserted in the last 3 publications of Müteferrika, and it was Müteferrika's last layout innovation. However, these pages can only be provisionally regarded as title pages because they do not contain the author's name and the title of the work. The title itself appears on the opening page of the main text, as in the Islamic manuscript tradition. What we have here in this quasi-title page, in these round shapes, are actually the eloquent titles of the Sultan, of the Grand Vizier here in the right, and in the left of the Grand Mufti, who gave the permission for publication of the particular book. And below, at the bottom, Müteferrika inserted the place of publication, Constantiniye, that is Istanbul, and the year of publication. But nowhere in this title page you can see a title and the name of the author of the published text. It is fair to ask why Müteferrika did this. While the real title page has the function of identifying the text and its author, in this case, the aim seems to have been different. This quasi-title page was not intended to tell potential customers and readers who the author was or what the work was about, but to inform them that the printing of the book had been authorized by the Sultan, the Grand Vizier, and the Grand Mufti. The impression remains that Müteferrika's main aim in introducing such a page was to boost readers' confidence in his latest publications, which were not selling as well as he would have liked. It is also unknown whether he was inspired to use such a layout by a particular manuscript or whether it was one of his experiments in his search of typographic perfection, visual appeal, and readers' approval. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen such a quasi-title page in the preserved manuscripts. And also, in some of his publications, he included engravings which were almost imitations of the manuscripts of the miniatures included in the manuscript from which the text was reproduced in printed form. Here you can see several examples of such Müteferrika's engravings, which were inspired by the miniatures from the manuscript copies he used to reproduce the text. And also, Müteferrika was very prominent for map making, but again, when he was printing maps, he used this time Western models. This very famous map of the constellations, included in one of the Müteferrika's publications, in the left side, was actually a replica of a French map in the right, published before Müteferrika's publications. And also here you can see almost the same replica, which we can see in Western sources and also in some of the Müteferrika press publications. Another striking example is the map of Egypt, published by Müteferrika in 1730, which is almost 100% replica of a map of the Egypt published by Johannes Jansonius in 1658. So in conclusion, according to Yasemin Gencer, the Müteferrika publications, quote, follow a shaky yet clear path, not away from the manuscript form, but toward it. However, it was just partly true because Müteferrika's layout experiments went in both directions. Some stuck to manuscript tradition, others to print culture. He put printed borders in the first two publications, and then he stopped doing so in the following. On the other hand, in the fourth and the following publications, he introduced a standalone title, not on a separate title page, but on the opening page of the main text. And from the ninth publication, he introduced a woodcut decorative headpiece. Except for the French manual Grammature, all the other publications lack real title pages. However, the 14th and the final 16th publications have quasi-title pages, which visually resemble normal title page, but in terms of the information about the book provided on them, the only similarity are the details related to the place and year of publication, while the most indicative feature of the title page, the title itself, is missing. The Müteferrika publication's inconsistency both in the layout and the composition of the body text reflects the initial stage of the introduction of printing to the Ottoman Muslims, when not everything was fully set up and various strategies were sought in order to stick to the book market, reading public's taste, and the reality as a whole. In general, not only did the Müteferrika publications follow the manuscript layout, but it was more or less true even for the later 18th and even 19th century Ottoman printed books. Therefore, according to the renowned Turkish scholar of Turkish printing, Meral Alpay, despite some European influences on the layout, the books printed between 1729 and 1927 could be regarded as incunable. Yasemin Gencer echoes this assessment in an even more convincing way by defining the Müteferrika publications as just, quote, printed manuscripts. And finally, I would like to announce the publication of my book, which will be published in the following year, in 2025. The title is The Müteferrika Press, Arabic Typography in an Ottoman Context. And what I presented today to you is part of this book, and I hope that you will also enjoy the book when it is out soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Благодарим много.
Моля.
Was a gist. So if you allow me, first of all, to begin, Mary, by saying that it is very interesting, detailed, and certainly food for thought. I'm sure the Greater's book in 2025 will, be a contribution to such a specific topic, that actually requires, a little bit of a background historical knowledge. And I'll ask my first questions actually, because as a political scientist, I'm far away from this topic, but I get fascinated. So my first two questions would be about Müteferrika, which we don't know his original Hungarian name, converts to Islam, establishes the first press. So I'm interested, Professor Sabev, into the following. The transfer of the printing technology itself, how did it happen? Did Müteferrika, and I saw, some of the previous writings that you have done, but I want for our audience, for you to reiterate, should we consider basically Müteferrika's press a success, a failure? And what is the innovation outside of the very detailed typography that you were talking about the borders, about the way it was put out? What was the broader innovation that was brought to the Ottoman Empire? So what's the longue durée of Müteferrika in essence? Thank you.
Thank you. As for the technological aspect of printing enterprise of Müteferrika, it was first a matter of providing the needed equipment for establishment of such a printing press, and second, to have at hand proficient and capable workers, printers themselves, in order to be able to print books. We don't know if Müteferrika he himself was capable in printing, actually. According to some scholars, when he was still in his hometown Koloshvar in Transylvania, he studied at a Protestant college, and it is said that this Protestant college had also a printing press, and he might have been an apprentice, or in a way, he might have some work there in this press, and at least he must have been more or less proficient in the technology of printing, if not personally. And but on the other hand, I think that he was more enthusiastic than actually professional in printing in the first place. And according to some sources, his first press was a second-hand Armenian press provided from an Armenian press in Istanbul. But the second-hand press was very of low quality, and he was not happy with this. And then he tried to import presses from abroad, and there are different theories according to which these presses were imported from France or from Austria or from even Amsterdam, from Holland. But at some point, when he started his printing press in 1726-27, he had 6 presses, 4 for printing books and 2 for printing maps. And obviously they were in good quality and in good shape to help Müteferrika to print relatively good books with good quality. And it is also maybe could serve as a good explanation for why he actually managed to sell 2/3 of his print run. According to his estate inventory, upon his demise, some 3,000 copies of his books were stacked in his home. But on the other hand, we know that the total print run of the whole output of his press was around 10,000. So it means that he managed at least to sell 2/3 of his books, which is not bad, I think, as a pioneering effort in printing in the Ottoman Empire. And on the other hand, the pioneering activity of Müteferrika was not only in printing in itself, but also in providing the reading public access to texts which were not otherwise very popular and were not copied in many copies by the manuscript copies. Because he was not allowed to print religious books, he preferred to print books related to history, to geography, to political science also. He published his own treatise on the need of the Ottoman state to improve its army, for example, following Western models and also the Russian model. And in this sense, he tried to somehow to develop the reader's taste towards different kinds of genres, different kind of texts, and different kind of topics.
Thank you very much, Professor Sabev. Mary, would you like to have your questions? I see that we have one hand raised already. You know, I think it's coming from Czech Republic.
Let me first quickly ask mine, and then we can go to Adam. Yeah, so I'm wondering a little bit about the markets for these books. How, I mean, did you find discussions in the documents anywhere about like, who was the sort of target market? I'm assuming it's kind of more elite, obviously, readership, but were they from different religious groups? I mean, even though it was in Arabic script, I mean, like Christian, for example, Christians that read Arabic or others, because many would have read Arabic script. And then I also, like, along those lines, I'm interested in this idea of the authorized publication of in the kind of title page, how it was authorized. Were there things that were rejected for publication, and were so therefore didn't, weren't printed and published? Because, it does seem like there's a lot of translations from French and German. I'm just wondering if there was suspicion of this whole enterprise on the part of the Ottomans, and if so, were they filtering like what they were willing to authorize and what not? And thinking about like who was reading them and stuff like that. You may not have sources for all of that. I'm just wondering if you do.
Yes, actually, we have information about the books he was authorized to publish because they were published. But we don't have any information if Müteferrika applied for a particular text and he was not authorized to publish it. So I haven't come across with such documents in the archives. And also Müteferrika himself, he has several texts which he wrote himself, and he didn't complain from being, prohibited to publish a given text. But on the other hand, I think that he was applying for publication of texts for which he was sure that he would be permitted to publish them. So he was very careful on the one hand. On the other hand, some of the books he published, mainly historical books, actually he published them on the advice of the Grand Mufti of the time. So when you have a book recommended by the Grand Mufti to publish it, you have, automatically you have the permission to publish it, And the readership of the Müteferrika's publications differed from the general readership, because the general readership was much more attached to the religious topics, to the Quran, to the works related to Quranic exegesis, to theology and other stuff. And mostly this readership consisted of religious functionaries, muftis, judges, religious judges, qadis, the so-called qadi, and also students and the theological schools, the so-called madrasa. And they usually copied by hand most of the text they studied at the schools, and therefore they almost they did not need printed versions of such works because they disposed with plenty of manuscript copies of these works. What Müteferrika offered to the general Ottoman reading public was an output related to political history and also to geography. And these topics were not as popular as the religious topics. And also people who would be potentially interested in such topics pertain to the Ottoman ruling class, to the elite. And this is also explains the relatively limited number of the potential readers of the Müteferrika's publications. And therefore, actually, he published the print run, the normal print run of one of his publication was 500 copies. and with just two exceptions. One of his publications had a print run of 1,200 copies, and the French grammar had 1,000 copies. But besides them, all the other publications were printed in 500 copies print run, and even though in a period of 20 years, only one or two publications were sold, publications sold out. So the whole print run was sold, while the other print runs were still, some part of them remained unsold.
Okay, thank you. Adam, do you have a question still?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of brand. Can you hear me? I don't know. Check my mic. My question kind of comes on the back of that, and so you're talking about in terms of he's moving towards manuscript, but he's also experimenting in multiple directions. How much of that is not him experimenting, but also being kind of pulled by market forces? It's kind of similar to what Dr. Neuberger asked, because when you're talking about, you said specifically, well, you didn't do borders around the French grammar. I'm not surprised, but like, I don't see that as being something he would experiment in. It sounds like something he would have done to kind of progress other ventures. So how much of this was his own kind of experimenting, and how much was being driven by other forces in those elites that are, did he ever do any private runs? Do we know anything about that? Those kinds of things.
It was a combination of the two. I think that on the one hand, he was trying to experiment with some visual layouts of his publications, but on the other hand, he indeed was forced by the book market, because when he published his first three publications without individual titles appearing on the page, on the first pages of his publications, he obviously noticed that it was a problem. And also when he saw that his first 8 publications, which were without headpieces, printed headpieces, he noticed that actually after being bought by the readers, by the end users, he saw that the customers started to illustrate or to decorate the printed books with handmade headpieces. And forced by this situation in the book market, obviously, from his 9th publication, he started to print printed headpiece in his publications in order to satisfy the expectations of the readers, obviously. But all his publications remained actually black and white in appearance, so the readers were still not satisfied fully by this, and they now, when they had printed headpiece, they continued to color them by hand in order to have a nice looking copy of a given text.
Thank you very much. We do have one more question, and this is from our colleague Christian Atanasov. Christian?
Thank you, Orlin, for your talk. It was very interesting. I just have two very, very quick and brief questions. First, is there any kind of economic related, books, published by Müteferrika with economic topics, or how to say, being such kind of economic issues, political economy, or stuff like that? And my second question is about your book, which will be published next year. It will be with open access, right?
Yes, the answer to the second question is that it will be open access,
Yeah.
because it it is a part of a series published by De Gruyter, and within the project, Type Arabic project, and the editor-in-chief of this series is Professor Yana Fyodorov, who is among us today. And because because the project is supported by the European Research Council, according to the rules, all the publications should be in open access.
Yeah, that's a great rule.
Yes, and as for your first questions about if Müteferrika published something related to economy, no. I think in the 18th century the Ottomans still did not were preoccupied with topics like economy, or I mean theory in theoretic
Yeah.
means. I think it happens in the 19th century,
Yeah, that
more
will
or
be
less.
surprising, but I just had to.
But on the other hand, if not as a topic, Müteferrika was also careful about the economic aspect of printing, because when he offered to the Ottoman Sultan the introduction of printing, he said to him that if the Westerners publish books in Arabic script, and if they gain profit from their sale in the Middle East, why should we not do this by ourselves and to have these profits for us, not for the foreigners? So it was a kind of one of the motives to offer to the Sultan to allow the establishment of a printing press. And but we don't know how profitable actually was his printing enterprise, because although he managed to sell 2/3 of his copies he printed, we don't know if the incomes from these sales actually covered the expenses for the production of these books, because we don't know the cost of the equipment. Actually, we don't know the cost of the labor, and we can just suggest what was the cost of the paper used. And initially, actually, I found an interesting Ottoman document from the Ottoman archive, and according to which Müteferrika received credit from the treasury in order to be able to publish his first books. And this credit was given him without interest. It is interesting for your topic of research in particular. And it was a kind of state help which actually helped Müteferrika to start smoothly his printing enterprise. And I think it is an interesting aspect of the history of his printing press.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, I think we're getting close to the end of time, but I think we'll take one last question from Yana. And thank you for those links in the chat.
Yeah.
We know you're involved in this project, so it's very helpful for everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Orlin, for this captivating presentation of your research. And evidently, we're looking forward to see the book very soon. And I've been following up with Orlin, so I know that he's working on it. And I wanted to add some points. First of all, just the information that the series of De Gruyter is called early Arabic printing in the East. And we'll have 10 volumes all in all, which need to be published before the middle of 2026 when the project ends. Orlin's volume is number 5 in the series, and we've got more. But in the second volume, which is a collected works, proceedings of conferences in principle, you will find a whole chapter on the question, on answers to the question that was put about the attitude of the court and the Mufti about printing and the discussions that took place in Istanbul before this, and actually the way the firman was formulated so that the court and the ulama were sure that would ensure that Müteferrika will not print anything that would put either the system, the Ottoman political system, in danger, or religion. So he was prohibited from the beginning to tackle a few topics, and this is why there was no censorship. And he, as Orlin pointed out, Müteferrika was very careful to choose only titles that fell within the scope of the firman that he had received. So everything went smoothly for him. There is no red ink in his books because the technological process of printing in 2 colors or more would make it for the mobile type press to put the same sheet of paper twice in the press. And if you were not a very good printer or you didn't have very good apprentices, the red words, let's say, would be slightly above or below the black one, so that made it tricky. And I suppose that Müteferrika wanted to keep his the cost of his books lower, so he didn't do that, which would have increased the expense and the cost. I think that Orlin is bringing novelties, total new things to the domain, because, for instance, you mentioned erratas. Did you find an errata in Müteferrika's book? That is fascinating, because erratas are an entire domain of philology, but also the history of the book. There are not many erratas in books, and when an editor felt the need to put it there, you have a lot of explanations. He was not a native speaker. He didn't know the script. We have this also for the Christian books printed in Wallachia and Moldavia. We have one errata, which is very rare. So that's going to be totally new. And also you showed us how the title of the book was printed on the block of leaves of folio of sheets in Muhammad al-Saudi in 1730. I suppose that was a stamp, so they would carve, they would make a wood block and they would put it in black ink and stamp it by hand. That was very costly and took a lot of time. It was very time consuming, you see. So thank you for this wonderful invitation to Orlin, and it's a great honor and pleasure for us to be somehow present in your projects. So thank you, and thank you, Orlin. Thank you to the hosts also.
Okay, I didn't know if Orlin, if you wanted to respond to any of that, or I think it was just more comments and praise for your work. And obviously there's a lot that we don't like, if you're not a specialist on this time period and the history of the book, that there's a lot of subtleties that, thank you, Jana, for bringing those to our attention. All right, well, I think we're out of time. So I just want to thank again, Orlin, for this wonderful presentation and everyone for coming. And this is our last Balkan Circle session for this semester. So we hope to see everyone back in the spring. And again, thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mulțumesc. And we're looking, yes, to see you all in the spring, and thank you for accepting our invitations. the circle is going strong for more than 5 years now. So it's a Friday tradition, a good intellectual, delight to listen to. And we have people like Dan, for instance, who's very quiet, but let me brag. He is he's a connoisseur. He is a kind of a testament as to why we do this, not only for ourselves, but for ordinary Texans and people, that would by admission, would wait for Friday to have access to sort of the best specialists on the Balkans within their respective fields, and make it accessible for topics that open new perspectives. So благодаря много, оценяваме.
Благодаря.
Happy holidays, and we'll see you after the break. Thank you all.